Your supplements are killing you. Yes, really, they're killing you. In this video, I'm going to be talking about multiple reasons why over 99% of supplements are actually toxic for you, as well as which few are actually worth the money. And I'm going to be using studies throughout so you can see reasons why. So the first reason is that many supplements aren't what they claim to be. Many supplements are underdosed, mislabeled, or from a factory in China with no actual testing. Even if they do claim the third-party testing, they often need to actually show some level of real certification in order to know for sure that that's the case. Often these products have heavy metals and other byproducts in them, and there's a video actually right here by Logan Talks Health where he actually third-party tested them himself. Obviously he's promoting his own supplements, but there's a bunch of studies too which do promote this. The key figure we're going to be talking about today, called Jonas Wonderplanets, who is an alternative nutritionist, actually did a clinical evaluation of 1,200 commercial supplements, and he concluded that almost all of these products induced widespread glandular and systemic toxicity, with only 9 out of the 1,200 supplements that he tested possessing actual clinical efficiency, and these ones were prepared under a certain temperature. These observations were never published as peer-reviewed clinical research, and therefore should be viewed as his own clinical observations rather than established scientific evidence. But let's talk about some of the actual peer-reviewed evidence that we see. So this first study shows about how there's heavy metals and there's some different byproducts and such in some herbs and stuff. And by the way, all studies in this video are going to be left in the description so you can take a look at them yourself and, you know, look at the abstract and look at the evidence. I'm just going to be briefly skimming through them. This next one was where researchers found considerable variability between bottles of the same supplement and detected contamination and inconsistencies. This demonstrates that supplement quality can vary substantially between manufacturers. And in this third study, it shows that testing found measurable contamination with lead, cadmium, mercury, and arsenic, all heavy metals, in a number of commercially available supplements. This highlights that contamination is a genuine issue rather than just theoretical. So the second reason why supplements are killing you is because supplements are standalone and therefore they don't often actually absorb and can cause issues. Let's assume that supplements are what they actually claim to be, or we've got some sort of supplement which is really what it is, from some high quality brand. Although the vitamin C supplement, for example, is chemically the same as real vitamin C from fruits, so oranges or lemons, real vitamin C from these lemons and oranges are complex and they contain live enzymes and trace minerals which obviously your body can use in order to actually digest this. Whereas the synthetic supplement vitamin C is just an isolated shell, and although chemically the same, it doesn't have any of these enzymes or trace minerals which help to digest and help your body to recognize that the vitamin C can be used. And because many of these supplements are standalone, they don't have these enzymes, they don't have these extra minerals or anything to help absorb it. Studies show that these supplements don't actually absorb properly, like if you ate the whole food. Like we talked about previously with synthetic versus real vitamin C, these enzymes and trace materials actually allow your body to actually absorb the vitamin C and use it properly. So let's take a look at the first study. This review explains that nutrients naturally occur within a complex food matrix containing many interacting compounds, and that these interactions influence nutrient bioavailability, so how well it can actually digest and be used by your body, and physiological effects rather than nutrients acting completely independently. This essentially means that obviously there's actually a proven difference between taking vitamin C or whatever supplement, taking vitamin C from eating a lemon. We have all these different complicated different factors which interact and allow your body to actually use it properly, and therefore is much more bioavailable and usable by your body. And it also concludes that nutrients frequently work synergistically, so therefore together, and that means that combinations of nutrients can have greater physiological effects than isolated nutrients. Now this next study discusses how combinations of naturally occurring food components can improve micronutrient bioavailability compared with isolated nutrients. So just another review that kind of shows the same thing. And then this next one is a paper explaining that the nutrient form and food composition are highly important determinants of micronutrient bioavailability. So here we have 3 different peer-reviewed studies which actually show about bioavailability of standalone nutrients or standalone supplements versus the whole food, which contains all the enzymes, minerals, trace nutrients, etc. And this final one is not wholly related, but it's kind of a whole kind of micro point which shows that even if the supplements do absorb properly, they can cause problems with other nutrients, which is just another thing showing that, you know, these things are really complicated when you actually have the real food, and you know, it should be normally like paired with other things. So this specific study shows that when you have a lot of zinc, your copper can get depleted, and therefore, you know, like we need to be careful with supplementing individual supplements without knowing exactly the effects supplements. The third reason why is because there's a lot of misinterpreted studies. I know what you're thinking right now. If these supplements don't absorb or aren't used properly by the body, then how come there are so many studies which show that they actually produce positive result? And we have all these evidence. We have all this evidence that creatine and vitamin C and vitamin D all work great in the body. And I would argue, and many people would argue, that the supplements often misinterpret results by confusing stimulation with nourishment. So stimulation essentially meaning that we are targeting a response, whereas nourishment is like we're truly achieving the response. So for example, with vitamin C, when you flood the body with it, the body recognizes that we have an acidic irritant and an unnatural isolate, and therefore will respond by buffering the acid and repairing local tissues and therefore releasing collagen. So this is actually one explanation why when you take synthetic vitamin C, you would get collagen, increased collagen uptake. Whereas with the real vitamin C, we have all these actual live enzymes and stuff that help us to actually absorb the vitamin C and use it instead of just buffering and repairing local tissue, and therefore our actual whole body synthesis of vitamin C and our collagen synthesis will actually be increased. So that's the difference between stimulation and nourishment. The thing is though, in a short-term laboratory study, this looks like a positive boost in collagen production, but that's really a response to a damage. The main point though is that a lot of these studies don't really look into the full effects or the side effects of these supplements, and are just meant to make the supplements look good and beneficial. This next study is one really good example of that. This demonstrates that supplementing one isolated form of vitamin E can unintentionally reduce other naturally occurring vitamin E forms, illustrating how isolated supplementation can have unintended biological consequences. This kind of reminds me of testosterone. Like if you ever see those guys who do testosterone replacement therapy. So for example, someone like Clavicular, who he started testosterone doing it like 14 years old, and now he can't really produce testosterone naturally anymore. He's going to have to be on testosterone for the rest of his life. And it's kind of like this, like a lot of these supplements and stuff can have really unintended side effects which could really ruin your health. So we have to be careful, and we can't really trust all of these studies like just at face value. This next study shows that high folic acid intake can mask vitamin B12 deficiency, therefore allowing the neurological damage to progress despite blood tests appearing improved. So like I said, like we're not really investigating everything, and we're not looking over the long course. We're not looking over the long term of 20 years and 10 years and 5 years to really see what happens at the full extent. We're looking at some slightly different blood tests over the course of maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months, maybe a year, and it's not really enough time to really know the full extent, because it's not enough time for the patients to start reporting things like neurological damage and stuff over the long term, and therefore we can obviously tweak the study. And this is my problem with a lot of these studies, is like a lot of these effects are misinterpreted, and even the proven ones where we do it for 10 years, it's hard to even say, because to actually fully do all these tests on everyone is super expensive, and it's really hard to know how much of it is real. Like for example with creatine, this is actually one of the good proven supplements, which is one that I'm going to recommend later in a specific form. But some people would argue that there are some side effects. I have seen a lot of videos online where people talk about hair loss on creatine, and I believe the reason for that is because of heavy metals. So for example, if you get cheap creatine online, maybe from Amazon, it's quite possible that you get heavy metals in it, because it's often from a Chinese lab, which is not really well tested, and therefore can contain trace amounts of heavy metals. And in my opinion, heavy metals can cause hair loss, since in my opinion hair loss is not just because of DHT or anything like this, is also a form of detox and your body's way of releasing some bad things for your scalp, and therefore you lose your hair. And heavy metals can be one of those things, restricting blood flow and causing a detox there, and therefore causing hair loss. And that's my opinion. And even some people like Jonas von der Planets would argue that creatine can cause strain on kidneys and liver due to the water retention in muscles. And this is not really something that we really know too much in depth about, because there haven't been too many studies completely testing this completely in depth. And when we normally look at creatine studies, it's normally measuring difference in muscle mass, so DEXA scan or whatever, like some sort of muscular scan, but we're not really checking blood tests, or we're not really checking organ function. We're not checking all these different things that could actually tell us something interesting. But I do want to show you guys that there's this large evidence review that concludes that creatine monohydrate is one of the safest and most extensively researched sports supplements when manufactured to high purity standards. So once again, the high purity standards are important, and actually this one is so highly tested that I think when we are talking about real high quality, even synthetic creatine, we're talking about real benefits. Now let's talk about Jonas again. He argued that many commercial supplements produce temporary stimulation rather than genuine nourishment, and therefore he believed that because of that, it explains why people often feel initially great because your body is responding, but maybe not in the long term doing well. And therefore, even if you eventually experience fatigue or other symptoms, you have it in your mind that this initial boost is like a placebo. It will make you think, oh, it couldn't be because of this supplement. It must be because maybe I had bad sleep or whatever. But Jonas also claimed, word for word, capsules are, you know, some kind of either gelatin or cellulose, and neither of them are digestible, and they clog up the system. So if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that the capsule wasn't heated. So this is another point actually to bring up. I mean, I don't really have any major studies on this, but you know, cellulose and gelatin are fairly unnatural and not too bioavailable or digestible. So if you are getting your supplements in a pill form, that's something to consider, I think. Now let's talk about the final supplements that I actually do recommend, because I think not all supplements are bad, and I do generally think like you should have a balanced diet. So you should be eating good amounts of meat, you should be eating animal products, some fruit, maybe some vegetable juice. Things like this would be incredible. Maybe some dairy, and you should be, ideally, because you're eating all of these things, be getting everything you need, your nutrition profile. However, there are a few which genuinely you might be deficient in for some various reasons, and which I will say generally they could benefit you much more than they would harm you in any way. And the first one will be vitamin D. The thing is with vitamin D, I have some here because I'm from the UK, right? And during the winter we have like zero sun, and therefore the only way for us to get in vitamin D is through eating something like beef fat, which has a little bit of vitamin D, because obviously the beef, the cows are exposed to the sun, and therefore in the fat they're going to store a little bit of vitamin D, but it's not really enough. Like, we really can't get any sun during the winter, so we kind of have to actually supplement vitamin D. And I know it has some of the problems, especially, maybe, I'm not sure about this brand, but I know it's to have some of the problems with heavy metals and poor testing. But I do think there are some studies, which you can see here, which do show that vitamin D supplementation is recommended for people at increased risk of deficiency, and recognizes that deficiency is super common in populations with limited sunlight exposure. So if you're in a Nordic country, Russia, if you're in the UK, you know, places like this, maybe even Canada, northern US, that vitamin D supplementation is recommended. But obviously you should just be getting high quality and ideally third party, actually certified supplements. Now let's talk about magnesium glycinate. Yes, it should be specifically glycinate. I've got some glycinate right here. It's powder, it's very good. We aren't dealing with any cellulose, or we aren't dealing with any capsules or anything. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's a very heavily tested and proven product, which is really hard to get enough magnesium, even with a balanced diet. There's not that much in meat. There's not that much in dairy and stuff. So generally, you can almost always benefit from having a scoop of magnesium glycinate at night. And also importantly, magnesium glycinate is like, the timing actually kind of matters, and you shouldn't generally eat before sleeping, right? But you should normally take magnesium before sleep. So it's actually one of these things where actually it will be quite beneficial to have a supplement, because there's no real downside. Like, it's well tested, it's well proven that, you know, taking magnesium will generally not have any major issues with synthesis, even though it's standalone. And also you get a really big benefit for sleep, which is one of the most important things to optimize. And so we can take a look at this study here, and this review concludes that magnesium deficiency is relatively common, and adequate magnesium intake is important for hundreds of enzymatic reactions throughout the body, and also sleep. Now, finally, let's talk about CreaPure creatine. You can see it's CreaPure. This means that it's made in Germany and is 100% tested. That is 100% creatine monohydrate, which is very, very useful, because that means we're not dealing with any heavy metals. The only problem with this is that it's about double the price of normal creatine. So this is about 500 grams, so half a kilogram. I think this is about 30 pounds. It's really expensive, but I do really recommend it, especially if you are someone who is like a vegan diet, so you aren't going to get any creatine at all from your meat, or maybe if you're a bodybuilder or you're super obsessed. And I would say, just if you're going to not get CreaPure, you should absolutely skip out on creatine, because you might see some hair loss, you might see some other issues. So you should definitely only be using CreaPure if you are going to buy synthetic. And yeah, again, I'm going to show you guys this study which shows the full extent of the evidence and benefits of creatine. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I have a lot of supplements I've bought over the years that I'm going to get rid of. Some vitamin C. I don't believe this is good. I'm probably going to just chuck it, you know. It cost me some money, but it is what it is. I have some Korean ginseng. I have all these different random supplements. I have some glycine. I have some NAC. N-acetyl L-cysteine. I have all of these supplements which I'm actually just going to chuck away. I'm only really going to hold on to the vitamin D, the CreaPure, and the magnesium glycinate. And I might not even buy some of them in the future, because I do think with a real good diet, you don't really need supplements in general. Like, the benefit of vitamin D is only really apparent during the winter, Like right now when the sun is out in the UK summer, I'm doing great. I don't need it at all. I'm just holding on to it. And I might even look into getting some higher quality, more third-party tested ones, because I bought this supplement when I didn't really know much about all of this stuff. And so I hope that if you buy supplements in the future, you buy ones like these, like actually third-party tested, pure magnesium glycinate or Pure creatine, real supplements that will actually have a real tangible effect. And these are the only two supplements I'm taking right now on a daily basis, and it's because of the fact that we have the sun, so obviously vitamin D is not necessary, but both of these are great. I have no problem with these. They have no capsules. They're both highly third-party tested and exactly what they say they are. I mean, magnesium glycinate maybe has some slight issue with synthetic, even same with creatine. I mean, obviously you're supposed to normally get creatine through meat, but overall, like, yeah, I hope you get some supplements like that if you do need it. Like if you are living in a Nordic country or Russia or wherever, you know, get your vitamin D supplement. But yeah, let me know what you guys think and leave a like. And I'm gonna have a skincare video coming out soon, talking about some of the things you can do to get rid of scarring and to make your skin look great.